Hello and welcome to Always Bored Never Boring. Last month I made a video covering the first half of a new side quest for Warhammer Quest Cursed City, which was published in White Dwarf 497. If you haven't seen that video yet, you might want to check it out first, because today I am looking at the second half of the side quest, which you can find in White Dwarf 498. Unfortunately, I have to say I am somewhat disappointed. The content in issue 497 contained a number of errors and omissions, and the content, or lack of content, in issue 498 has only compounded or highlighted those previous problems. But let's get into it. The side quest is the Madness of Baron Veingulper, which introduces 4 new journeys the heroes can elect to play through at any time during the core game campaign or the Night Wars expansion campaign. The side quest journeys play in sequence, pitting the heroes against the ghoulish denizens of the Clot region of Ulfenkarn. We have already seen the first 2 journeys, and 6 new enemy types. Now we are getting the remaining 2 journeys and another 2 enemy types. The content spans 8 pages in the magazine, but the first 2 pages are the background for the quest and the rules for including it in your games of Cursed City exactly as presented in issue 497. This is a waste of space, as you need the previous month's content to run this month's content anyway. The duplication of the content dashes any hopes we may have had that Games Workshop were going to give us some guidelines for how to introduce ghouls in other campaigns. We don't get any encounter cards, and we don't get any rules for how to replace commonly occurring core game enemies with ghouls. It really does feel like a serious omission. While the side quest angle is interesting, this new content really is only doing half a job. But anyway, moving on to the 3rd journey in the quest. This one is called Retreat. The Baron has sounded the retreat after taking 2 beatings already, and the heroes are in pursuit. The idea here is that each turn more crypt guards will spill onto the board from lich gates along the left edge and attempt to reach one of the 4 mysterious objects located around the map. To do this, they will forego attacking completely. They won't even make behaviour rolls, and instead they will take 2 move actions. They are in full retreat, and they have no desire to slug it out with the heroes. If at any point a crypt guard model reaches a mysterious object, the ghoul has successfully made it to a rally point and is removed from the board. The quest token is then advanced 1 space on the quest tracker. Meanwhile, the heroes are trying to stop the crypt guard from escaping by using a special destroy action to take down the mysterious objects. This action requires a combination of activation dice totaling 18 or more. Of course, the objects are guarded by some enemies that do still plan to fight. Crypt Flayers, an Infernal Courtier, and a new enemy for this issue, the Gore Warden. So this isn't going to be an easy task. And of course, as with all of the journeys in this side quest, the hostile groups on the board do not have encounter cards and they can't be driven off. The Crypt Guard will automatically spawn, with the Lich Gates chucking out enough fresh units to make the hostile group up to 20 at the end of that group's activation, while slain Crypt Flayers have a chance of respawning every time they would activate. The Infernal Courtier and the Gore Warden act as mini-bosses that you only have to defeat once. If the heroes can destroy all 4 mysterious objects before the quest marker reaches the 10th spot on the tracker, they win. Otherwise they lose and will have to try again. And yeah, this quest doesn't seem too bad. It's an interesting idea. The heroes are presented with an endless tide of crypt guard, and the concern here isn't being overwhelmed in combat, but being unable to prevent those crypt guard from escaping. With 4 mysterious objects on the board, the heroes are going to have to spread out, and that does become a problem when they have to deal with tough enemies like the Gore Warden. But in an occurrence that is all too common with the Cursed City White Dwarf content, there is an error on the quest map. We are told in the rules to set up the retreat journey as if it was a hunt journey. That means the heroes should start on the drop zone tile. There is no drop zone tile on the map, and no indication where the heroes should start in the absence of one. There is, however, a 4 square tile, which is the reverse of the extraction zone tile, and I think that's probably where the heroes are supposed to start. It's on the right side of the board, close to some of the mysterious objects, but not so close that it would be too easy for the heroes to complete their objective. After noticing this, I went back and took a look at the Our Enemies Sally 4th journey from last month's issue of White Dwarf, and I realised it was the same situation there. There's no drop zone tile and no markers to indicate where the heroes should start. But there is the reverse side of the extraction zone tile, which, when I reviewed that issue, I had mistakenly assumed to be the drop zone tile. Incidentally, as I mentioned in the previous video, the Our Enemy Sally Forth mission also fails to indicate where the mysterious objects should be placed, and the problems don't end there. The initial setup states this mission has a hostile group containing 3 Crypt Haunter Courtier. Note the use of the singular courtier there. But there is only one on the board at the start of the mission. Is that an error? Should that be 1 courtier? On reflection, I think maybe it should be, because the Crypt Haunter Courtiers are a sort of champion class that lead Crypt Horrors into battle, and one of the Crypt Flayers kits, Games Workshop couldn't make this more complicated if they tried, actually includes the bits to create 2 Crypt Horrors and 1 Crypt Haunter Courtier, which would indeed be exactly the right quantities necessary to run this particular journey if the inclusion of the 3 Courtiers is an error. But that potential issue pales in comparison to the much bigger issue. We don't have any bloody rules for the Crypt Haunter Courtiers. Issue 497 did not include the rules for them, so naturally I assumed we would be getting them in issue 498. I should know better than to assume. It does, as they say, make an ass of you and me. There are no rules for Crypt Haunter Courtiers in issue 498. That being the case, I would rule that this is actually a mistake in the setup instructions for the Our Enemy Sally Forth journey. I would say the intention is to run it with 2 Crypt Horrors and 1 Crypt Infernal Courtier. I mean, I would, but the final mission in issue 498 also says it requires a Crypt Haunter Courtier, so I think Games Workshop just forgot to include the damn things. I'm getting ahead of myself though. If the heroes win the retreat mission, they chase Baron Veingulper back to his keep. Where the first journey of this side quest saw the Baron laying siege to the heroes, now the heroes are laying siege to him.
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
The idea here is simple. The Baron, represented by our second new enemy in this issue, the abhorrent Arc Regent, is chilling in the keep, keeping his distance from the heroes in the hope that Radukar will turn up to save him. The heroes have to slay the Baron before the Nightfall token reaches the Nightfall space on the tracker board. The main difficulty here is that all the doors on the board are shut, and while enemies can pass through them without difficulty, heroes must smash them down. The doors have no defense value, but take 6 damage to break through. Heroes target the doors in the same way they target hostiles. The good news here is that this is probably the same rules for smashing down doors that were omitted from the first scenario in issue 497, Laying Siege. I think it's a reasonable assumption to make. Damn, there I go assuming again. And this seems like a good idea for a mission. The Arc Regent has behaviours that allow him to command troops and harass the heroes without leaving the safety of his retreat, so he can be actively involved in the game right from the start while still forcing the heroes to hunt for him. That makes the journey a tense race against time. Of course, it wouldn't be new Cursed City content without a few issues to spice things up. This mission has 2 that are immediately apparent. The first is that the mission ends when night falls. That means we get a cool new enemy, the Arc Regent, but we will never get to see his true power. Hostiles become empowered when night falls, so as soon as the Arc Regent levels up, it's game over. But I suppose at least we can see him empowered in our regular games of Cursed City, once we homebrew our own way to include him in those games. The other main issue is, of course, the one I've already mentioned. This mission is supposed to include just one, Crypt Haunter Courtier, an enemy we don't have rules for. And I know it's definitely supposed to be a Crypt Haunter Courtier, because there's even an event that gives it an extra activation in the custom event table for this mission. Games Workshop literally just forgot to include the rules. If someone from Games Workshop is watching this, please upload the hostile card for Crypt Haunter Courtiers to the Warhammer community site. Heck, upload all the hostile cards. It will be easier for us to print them from the website rather than scanning all the pages of the magazine. But anyway, if the heroes kill the Arc Regent, they have won the side quest. They all gain experience, and they can bring one dead hero back to life at level 1. Why can they do this? I don't know, it doesn't say. Does it even matter at this point? Frankly, this whole thing is a mess. I have seen people saying it would be good if Games Workshop compiled all of the White Dwarf and community website content into an annual at the end of the year. If they were planning on doing that, I would hope they would take the time to clean up all of these errors first. You know, at least make the missions playable without having to add house rules. And I probably sound a bit negative in this review, which I don't really like to do. This is my hobby after all. I don't like to feel bad when I'm doing it. It is hard to be positive though. I think last month I went easy on issue 497 because I didn't have the full picture. I didn't know what issue 498 was going to add. But now I have that whole picture, and it's not particularly pretty. I've bought 2 issues of White Dwarf to get incomplete, incorrect content. Games Workshop should be better than that. But let's take a look at our final 2 hostiles. Maybe that will cheer me up. First we have the Gore Warden, who has the royal keyword that some of the Crypt Guard and Crypt Horror abilities trigger off. He's move 4, wounds 10, large size, has 1 melee attack rolling 2d8 and causing 3 damage as standard, 4 on a crit. His Royal Blood ability allows him to remove 2 wound or grievous wound counters each time he activates, so it's going to take a concerted effort to take him down. His Royal Hunting Party ability heals flayers and encourages them to charge into battle, but his To the Skies ability is the most interesting. He makes 2 move actions, and if either action ends adjacent to a hero, he scoops up that hero and throws them onto an empty space beside a randomly selected Lichgate, inflicting 3 damage on a stalwart hero and 4 damage on any other hero. The Gore Warden then flies off to a different, randomly determined Lichgate to regroup. That is a great ability. Not only does it inflict decent damage, but it's going to completely ruin any plans the heroes have. It breaks up strong formations and potentially isolates a hero, putting them in a world of hurt. After empowering, the Gore Warden's melee damage goes up to 4 or 5 on a crit, and he gains the Winds of Shyish ability. This inflicts 2 damage on all heroes on the board. Then the Gore Warden makes a charge action, and then the Gore Warden and any flayers are removed from the battlefield and placed at the Lichgate farthest from the heroes. Absolute chaos. Incredibly disruptive and difficult for the heroes to deal with. I like that. The second enemy is the abhorrent Arc Regent, who is also royal. He's move 3, wounds 12, large size, 1 melee attack rolling 2d12, inflicting 5 damage as standard or 6 on a crit. He has the Royal Blood ability for regenerating damage, but also has the Paragon of Virtue ability, which adjusts the profile of any weapon a hero uses to attack the Arc Regent, so it only causes 1 damage as standard or 2 on a crit. That's a really nasty passive ability. His behaviours, as I mentioned before, allow him to screw with the heroes without having to leave the safety of his inner sanctum. Horrific Screech forces heroes to discard an activation dice, inspiration point, or take 1 damage. Countless Servants brings up to 3 Crypt Guards as reinforcements, and Carrion Call adds 2 to the move value of all Crypt Guard the next time they activate. In all cases, the Arc Regent will only charge into battle if he can actually see a hero. Once the Arc Regent empowers, which he won't do in this particular mission because the mission ends at nightfall, his melee attack gets a buff and he picks up the new ability, As I Stand, So Too Do We All, which returns every slain enemy to the battlefield. It does feel a little bit like the Arc Regent was designed with this final mission in mind. The way he won't move unless he can see a hero ensures he makes it as difficult as possible for the heroes to hunt him down within the strict time limit. But I suppose his behaviours do reflect those of a noble lord who commands his troops from a relatively safe distance, but who won't back down from a challenge once the gloves come off. So I think both of these new hostiles seem interesting, and pretty difficult to deal with. The Arc Regent's weapon debuffing ability in particular is going to be a real pain. But that, as they say, whoever they may be, is that. I suppose before I give my final thoughts, we should tot up the cost for all of these miniatures. We're going to have to make some assumptions first though. 1. We are going to assume we are paying full retail price from Games Workshop direct. 2. We are going to assume the 3 Night Haunter courtiers listed in the second journey in issue 497 is supposed to be just 1. 3. We are going to assume that at some point Games Workshop will give us the missing rules for the Night Haunter courtiers. Bearing that in mind, we need 20 Crypt Guard at £60, 1 Royal Decapitator at £22.50, 2 Crypt Flares and 1 Crypt Infernal Courtier at £35, 2 Crypt Horrors and 1 Crypt Haunter Courtier at £35, 1 Marrow Scroll Herald at £22.50, one abhorrent Gore Warden at £27.50, and one abhorrent Arc Regent at £19. Grand total £221.50. Indeed. Overall, I think this side quest was an interesting idea. I love the narrative and the way the story develops from journey to journey, and some of the set pieces seem genuinely tense. Enemies are tougher and objectives seem more difficult to meet. Unfortunately, it's all been severely marred by sloppy execution, every one of the 4 journeys has at least one error, poor presentation, cards are printed back to back on magazine pages so you can't just cut them out and paste them up, and missed potential, like the lack of rules for including the Flesh Eater Court in other campaigns. Even the fluff text for this side quest hints at tantalising details that go nowhere and add nothing. The Baron, for example, has a loyal mount called Horgnir. At some point, according to the text in the magazine, the heroes cut Horgnir's head off. What was Horgnir? Why wasn't he included in the mission? Why mention the damn thing at all? I was also expecting a much larger enemy to fight. The fluff text says that a giant crouches beside a throne in the Klotz market square, bellowing to summon ghouls to battle. On rereading that text, I think the giant is supposed to be the Baron, which is a bit of a disappointment. Ultimately, while I appreciate Games Workshop trying to create new content for Cursed City, and while I can see a lot of good in what they have done here, well, I find it very difficult to recommend these issues of White Dwarf. What they offer isn't enough, isn't good enough, and it could have been, should have been, more. I am getting thoroughly fed up of saying that about Cursed City. But let me know your thoughts in the comments, because that is it from me for now. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so. And hopefully, I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone. Bye bye.